Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. How sweep it is. Toronto Blue Jays going for the sweep tonight at Rogers Center against the lowly Detroit Tigers. And everydayers like Gail, Gary, David Pizer, Sheffy Bones will recall that we talked at the beginning of this series that, yes, granted, it is a lofty goal to sweep any team, but with the Tampa Bay Rays coming to town for a weekend series, a sweep against the Tigers was likely needed. On today's episode, we look at the series finale. Plus, it is Throwback Thursday, so we'll get into a few throwback Blue Jay Tiger stories with more from our crossover conversation with Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays here with Scotty Bentley, Locked On Tigers. We turn our attention to the series finale on Thursday night. Now, as we tape this, we don't know how the previous games would have turned out, but I have to thank Scotty that if you're the Tigers and you're looking, how do we find a way to get out of Canada with 2 out of 3 winning the series? I would think that, had to be emphasis on winning one of those first 2 games. And I'm talking about to be able to avoid being swept, because all due respect to Spencer Turnbull, he's a major league pitcher, but Chris Bassitt on the mound for the Blue Jays, I feel like this Tigers lineup that is really scuffling. I feel like Bassitt, the veteran, is going to have the cure for what ails them. Is not going to have the cure, beg your pardon, for what ails them. I think Bassitt will have a good game against Detroit. And Scotty, I just can't see Spencer Turnbull putting a good outing, fourth here, putting enough good innings together to even get through. I'm going to say he doesn't even get through 5, Scotty. I'm concerned for your Tigers in this one. I think the Blue Jays lineup against Spencer Turnbull, this one might get ugly. Where are you on the Thursday night game?
Yeah, well, Turnbull is an interesting case, because at his best, pre Tommy John, he was pitching like crazy. He was doing really well. Obviously, the no-hitter, he looked absolutely incredible. And then Tommy John happens, and so far, 2 starts back from TJ, having not pitched a major league regular season game in like a year and a half. It's the stuff is still there, and like the velocity is back, like completely. It's just honestly a really similar thing that kind of ailed him before Tommy John, which is the command is just very sporadic. Like on a pitch to pitch basis. There was one start, I think it was his second start of the season, where I was watching with a buddy of mine, and I literally looked at him and I was like, I don't think anyone in the park knows where any pitch is going for like every single time he throws the ball, like including the pitcher and catcher. Like it was
which is a problem.
Yeah, like really, really sporadic and all over the place. So it really does come down to how well can he just, I'm not asking for, Maddox out there. I'm not asking for pinpoint. If he has good enough stuff, if he can even put it in the general vicinity that he wants it to be in, he will be a very effective pitcher. And in his second start, he wasn't getting very many strikeouts or swings and misses at all, but he was getting a lot of weak contact and was kind of cruising through 5. And then the 6th inning happened and it absolutely all imploded and it was terrible. So we'll see. But stuff has never been a problem. He has filthy stuff that surprises everybody he faces that's not familiar with him. But it really is going to come down to just how efficient can he be and how many swings and misses is his good stuff going to be able to induce. And as I've said about every pitcher, against it's a tall task and a heck of a test against a really good lineup for sure.
We'll get you right back to more from our Throwback Thursday episode here on Locked On Blue Jays in just a moment. First, I did want to mention that for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right and the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check mark to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. And when you shop at eBay Motors, 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring a home run when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Thrilled to once again be joined by Scotty Bentley of Locked On Tigers for our Throwback Thursday episode. man, there are a lot of things in Toronto Blue Jay and Detroit Tiger history that you could throw back and talk about. I'll start with mine. Very painful, very painful. One of the all-time collapses, and Scotty and I are going to get into this briefly. I would definitely do maybe a whole episode on this one day. Like it maybe needs its own episode. It's one of the great collapses in Major League Baseball history, and it was actually authored by the Toronto Blue Jays. The 1987 Toronto Blue Jays, with about a week and a half left to go in the season, took 3 out of 4 from Detroit. Now that set up the final week of the season. So 6 games left in the final week of the season. The Blue Jays need to win 1 game to win the American League East. And I'm going to remind you, this is in those days where wild card was not only didn't exist, no one had even thought of a wild card. You won your division or you went home. 1987 Toronto Blue Jays, who, dare I say, were probably the best team in baseball. Like, they're probably going to win the World Series that year. Dare I say it. Last 6 games of the season have to win 1. The Milwaukee Brewers sweep them. The Milwaukee Brewers in those days were the Tampa Rays of these days. It didn't matter what place Milwaukee was in, what place Toronto was in, who was on the roster, who was playing well at the time. Nothing mattered. The Brewers beat the Blue Jays every time, just like modern-day Tampa Rays. So that set up the final 3-game series of the season. It's at Detroit. Blue Jays walk into Detroit with a 2-game lead. If they win one of these games, they've won the East. Detroit has to sweep. Detroit wins all 3 games by 1 run. That middle game, Scotty, you talk about something you'll never see before. Mike Flanagan went 11 innings for the Blue Jays in that middle game, for crying out loud. You talk about, right? The starting pitcher these days goes 6 innings. They get some sort of reward, some sort of medal. He went 11 innings, and Scotty, he came out of the game kicking and freaking screaming. The only reason he allowed Jimmy Williams to take him out of the game, Blue Jay manager, was he thought Jimmy Williams was turning it over to Tom Henke, the Blue Jay star closer. In fact, Jimmy Williams went to rookie Jeff Musselman. Detroit would score a walk-off, and then that set up the final game of the season. Jimmy Key versus Frank Tannen, a couple lefties. This game was a gem. In the second inning, was it Larry Herndon barely hits a home run. I wish your fences were higher and deeper in those days, Scotty, because he barely hits a home run that George Bell just can't rob. That makes it 1-0 Detroit in the bottom of the second. That would be the final score. The Blue Jays would lose the last 7 in total. The last 7 games of the season, needed to win 1 to win the division, and it was all from the Detroit Tigers. And Scotty, the Blue Jays for that final series were without superstar shortstop Tony Fernandez because Bill Madlock, remember I said with a week and a half left in the series, Toronto took 3 of 4 from Detroit. That last game, Detroit actually won, and Bill Madlock took out Tony Fernandez, superstar leadoff hitter for the Toronto Blue Jays, on a taking out a double play at second base. It's nothing like today's rules, Scotty. Like you have to be able to touch second base now when you're sliding. Bill Madlock didn't even know second base was in the vicinity. He was so far off. But this is how baseball was played in these days, right?
Oh yeah.
He took out Tony Fernandez. And this is that old exhibition stadium, which was so wonky that the cutout, the artificial dirt cutout, and the dirt itself was together by wood and nail, like insane. So he flips over Tony Fernandez. He lands right on a piece of wood, breaks his arm. He's out for the rest of the season. Now, the crazy thing is Bill Madlock doesn't think it was a cheap shot. And I'm not going to come down on you, Scotty, for Bill Madlock. It was, look it up on YouTube. It's as cheap shot as you're going to get. But again, no, I mean, for our listeners here, for our viewers, no, I know you have, Scotty, but as cheap a shot as I've ever seen. Anyway, but what a collapse. Now, Scotty, 1987 is before your time, but you're so, you're entrenched in Detroit Tiger baseball. So I know this isn't a new story for you, and I know you know some things. So what are your memories, or what do you know about that 1987 Detroit Tiger team that it's still too soon for me to talk about, Scotty? Still too soon.
First off, I don't blame you, but that 87 team is really, really fascinating to talk about in like Tigers lore, just because it was really the last great team from that era. And a lot of people look at that as a team that should have won the World Series again, and was that in that 80s, like the Tigers, that era of baseball, the Tram and Whitaker and Morris and Gibson, like that era of team, right, was all still together. And 87, while it certainly wasn't the last time that they all played together or anything like that, it was kind of like a one last hurrah type of thing. And then they get into the 90s, which were absolutely horrific for the Detroit Tigers and whatnot. And after 87 is when it all started declining. And like Trammell, a lot of people think that Alan Trammell should have won MVP in 1987, right? If you have the analytics you do today, Like he outwarred pretty much everybody up on that panel and had a phenomenal season in 87 and one runner up. And so you have a lot of really fascinating storylines involving that team. And it all kind of stems from the like we call it the One Last Dance thing now because of the Jordan documentaries. White Light, like it again, it wasn't quite that because there was a lot of people that still, Tram and Whitaker played together all the way up until the mid 90s in Detroit. But there definitely was some feeling after that season of like, okay, we're pretty consistently losing a piece or two every single offseason, and it's getting lower and lower. Obviously, I mean, you guys are well aware Morris leaves and whatnot, and eventually finds his way to Toronto. So definitely one of those kind of last hurrah seasons where everything came together as you mentioned, obviously at the right time at the very end of the year. They didn't get off to a crazy hot start that year like they did in 84, but they had a really, really good second half and obviously ended up almost winning 100 games. And it's just so funny to think now that a team that could win, 96, 97 games, not be in the playoffs. That's totally, completely ridiculous. And that's not even really possible these days. But back then that's how it worked. And that's what happened in 87. But yeah, kind of the viewpoint of that whole team was like the last of a great era, I would say.
And Scotty, we'll get to your throwback memories with Blue Jays and Tigers in a moment, but just two quick follow-ups there. First of all, shout out to Aurelio Lopez, one of the great setup men I've ever seen in my entire life. But now, Scotty, you mentioned the 1987 MVP, American League MVP. Who did win that?
87? Yeah, there you go.
George Bell, yes, that's our guy. George Bell, yes, George Bell did win that one, yes. And you know what's absolutely incredible, Scott? Just to wrap up that 87 collapse, Sparky Anderson, of course, the manager of the Tigers at the time, and he said coming into that series, Blue Jays only need to win one game. They may well win one game. Blue Jays might win two. They might win three. I don't know, but I do know George Bell will not beat us. That I know. And in those days, Scotty, again, too young to remember, but the controversy during that time was that batters were corking their bats, so drilling the hole, taking out, and putting Super Balls. Literally, the Super Balls you're thinking of that you played with as a kid. Yeah, literally those. Putting those in the bat, and then. Cleaning it up, and the technology in those days was you would x-ray the bat. So the rule was a manager could request any bat to be taken out of the game. It would go to the umpire's room, and then later on after the game they would x-ray it. Every single time in that last three games against the Blue Jays, that George Bell came up to the plate, Sparky Anderson would just saunter out to the home plate umpire. The bat, that's
he sure did.
No rhyme or reason to it. He said point blank. I can tell you for a fact George Bell is not cheating. I know this for an absolute fact, but I can do this. This is part of the rules. I need to be in there mentally to him because I'm telling you he will not beat us. The Blue Jays might. George Bell won't. And Sparky Anderson was true to his word. Oh, boy. Here I thought we'd have fun talking about this, Scotty, and I'm realizing it's still too soon for me to talk about that. Okay, anyway, okay.
Well, no, it's a fascinating conversation, just in its own entity. Like, I mean, like I said, like the Tigers were they were above 500 at the break. Like they weren't like a bad team or anything like that. But in the second half of the season, post All-Star break, they went 50-27. Like
that's gonna work. Holy
right.
cow.
Like that is the and again, they were 48-37 at the break. Like they weren't bad. They were 10-11 games over 500, but they went 50-27 in the second half of the season, including I believe a 4-game win streak. I think they won the finale of the series before Toronto as well to cap off the year, and that's what did it.
Absolutely incredible, and just chock full of things in modern baseball you'll never see. Jimmy Key versus Tanana and that 87 finale. Yep. Both pitchers went the distance. You don't see that again. Flanagan going 11. You won't see that again. The Blue Jays won 96 games that season. Like you said, didn't make the playoffs. That's not even on the table. That's not even on the table anymore, Scott. That's not even possible. Everyone makes the wild. Anyway, but Scotty Bentley, Locked On Tigers, what are your throwback Thursday memories when it comes to Detroit Tiger and Toronto Blue Jay baseball?
Well, I think honestly the biggest one. Unfortunately, I did not grow up in the era where these two were division rivals, so there's nothing that's really going to come close to that 87 season. Also, I'm pretty sure Doyle Alexander pitched in that series. Obviously, Blue Jay and Tigers, so that's kind of a fascinating thing as well. Some revenge there for Doyle, but the one that really jumps out to me. There's two total that I think of when I think of Tigers versus Jays game, but the one is a 19 inning
Oh boy.
Jays victory from 2014. And I just remember watching I was in high school at the time, and I just remember watching with all of my friends, and we're watching it in my buddy's basement, and we were like, oh yeah, we're going to watch the game. And then after the game, we were going to go out and do something. And the game ended up going like 6 or 6.5 hours.
Yeah,
and,
6.5.
Baseball is worse a nightmare these days. And
Yeah.
it ended in a Jays victory, but the Jays were down 5-0 going into the 6th inning and won 6-5, which means the Tigers were held scoreless from the 5th through the 19th inning because they were obviously the road team. So the Tigers went out there and lost the game. And that's a playoff team. That's a division winner. That's a good ball club, that 2014 Tigers team.
Good point.
And they were shut out for 14 consecutive innings.
The Blue Jays had won the previous day in the 10th as well, had scored in the 9th to tie it and won in the 10th. In the game you're referring to, they score in the 9th, they win in the 10th. I don't remember how, but I know that Jose Reyes, if I remember correctly, Reyes knocked in the winning run. And anyway, Reyes was involved. Jose Reyes was involved.
I forgot Reyes was on that team.
He was involved in both wins for the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
Anthony Gose had a key stolen base to tie that game in the 9th, the one you're talking about. Remember, each team used 8 pitchers in that game. I think you're right, Scott. I think the Jays did win that game. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they may still be playing that game. Like, this was as marathon a game as we've seen. And
it's fascinating because for the Tigers, they had burned through literally their entire bullpen. So Rick Porcello pitched the last 2 innings.
That's who got the loss. Yeah.
The last 2 innings. Yeah. He pitched the 18th and the 19th because they had literally burned through. David Price got the start, and then it was Phil Koch, Al Albuquerque, Jabba Chamberlain, Blaine Hardy, Pat McCoy, who I forgot existed, Joe Nathan, and then Rick Porcello pitched the last 2 games and got the loss.
And I remember as well, in extra innings, the 10th, if I remember correctly, the 10th was just nothing. But man, from the 11th to the 19th, one team had a man in scoring position and 1 out every single inning. Many of those innings, both teams had a man on second or third with less than 2 out, with 1 out or no out, and it didn't happen. Yeah, you're right. It was against Rick Porcello in that 19th inning. Oh my goodness!
If you want to talk about non-clutch hitting, okay?
Jeez.
The Detroit Tigers, 22 hits, 5 runs. The Toronto Blue Jays, 17 hits, 6 runs is honestly not nearly as bad, but 22 hits and I would imagine how many walks here? 5 walks. So they had 27 base runners and scored 5 runs in the ball game. So that is certainly not very timely hitting by a rather good lineup at the time.
We're going to get you back to our Throwback Thursday episode. Hope you're enjoying the conversation with Locked On Tigers as well. But first, I wanted to mention the old, hey, try it free for 30 days. Yeah, just enough time to try it and then forget about it, right? In fact, over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about. You could be wasting money and not even realizing it. Rocket Money helps you find those forgotten subscriptions so you can stop paying for the ones you don't use. Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? Most people think they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions, but the actual total is closer to $200. If you don't know exactly how much you're spending every month, then you need Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancels your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and helps you lower your bills, all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about, and chances are you're one of them. Like that Stars app just to watch that one show, or that free gaming trial you never actually used. Rocket Money will quickly and easily find your subscriptions for you, and any that you don't want to pay for anymore, you just hit cancel, and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. Yeah, that easy. Rocket Money also helps you manage all your finances in one place and automatically categorizes your expenses so you can easily track your budget in real time and also get alerted if anything looks off. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person $720 per year. Cha-ching. Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnMLB. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOnMLB. Looking for a delicious snack and don't want all the sugar and all the calories? I do hear you. Now you need to try the best tasting protein bar ever built. Built. Yeah, Built bars. You've got to try them. What makes Built so good? Well, for starters, covered in 100% real dark chocolate. Yeah, yeah, covered in real dark chocolate. They come in unbelievable flavors too. I mean, there's a churro flavor, a peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. These are all yes, please. I'm not sure how Built does it. I mean, these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better, they are healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Now, you don't need to wait to get a box. For years, we've been talking about how you have to order Built bars at built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart. Now, you can still get the specialty flavors at built.com, but check them out in Walmart as well. Well, now, Scotty, you said you had 2 throwback memories. That's one more in the Blue Jays' favor. I'm going to assume the second one is in Detroit's favor, or I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, well, I guess kind of. Big picture, like the Tigers really didn't have anything good happen this season, but I do want to take it back to opening day of 2019. Now, the Tigers, they lost on opening day this year in embarrassing fashion, to be honest, but generally in my lifetime are like weirdly good on opening day. And they kicked off the season 2019 in Toronto, and the Tigers won. And 2019 was a dreadful season. 114 losses for the Detroit Tigers.
Goodness.
Absolutely horrific. Comfortably, not only the worst team in baseball, it's weird to have an 114 loss team and it only being the second worst team I've ever seen in my life, but that's unfortunately the truth. Shout out to the 2003 Tigers. But that 2019 team started with a win in Toronto, and Kristen Stewart, who I was a huge fan of. He hit a ton of home runs in the minors for the Detroit Tigers. And every single year leading up to 2019, he was leading whatever like team or league he was in. So like in single A, he had one of the highest home run totals in single A. In double A, he had one of the highest home run totals when he was in double A. In triple A, he had one. And so when he came to the majors, I was like, oh, we're getting like some thump in the bat and like, not 40 or 50 home run potential, but if he's a solid, high 20s, low 30s home run guy, that'd be awesome. And I believe he went yard in that game. And I just remember thinking, and I know he caught the final out because I vividly remember the final out of that game. And it ended up not mattering at all. And the Tigers ended up losing 114 times that season. But for one glorious day, I had rookie Kristen Stewart hits home run in Tigers victory, and I felt on top of the world.
And again, so awesome to hear a Tigers fan perspective from this, because Kristen Stewart, I want to say he had 15 major league home runs. I think that's actually his number. Yeah. And I thought that was a weak hitter that hit that home run. So you're saying, no, when he was on the major league level, right? But you're saying when he was coming up, there was cause for optimism there. That was 2019. That was Jordan Zimmerman and the Stroh Show each put on. That was 0-0 through 9 innings, Scotty. That 2-run home run from Kristen Stewart, that was in the 10th. That was 0-0 through 9. Daniel Hudson came in.
Yeah, well,
gave up a double to oh boy, who did he give up? Oh man, I'm blanking now. I remember he gave up right away. The go-ahead run was at second, and it didn't matter. The go-ahead run could have been. It didn't matter because Stewart launched that home run, and I don't remember Stewart catching that final out. I was probably passed out from in a pool of my own tears at that point, because you talk about the Tigers in that previous game going all those innings without scoring. Well, here's the Blue Jays home opener. Right. The entire country's excited. They play 10 innings and they score 0 runs. Like, are you kidding me right now? That's ugly, Scotty.
Not great. Yeah, for sure. Well, the man, I just remember the not having real optimism, because like we all were pretty well aware of what that team was going to be. I don't think anyone expected 114 losses, but there was some optimism around Stewart. And again, not that he was ever going to be some like perennial all-star hitter or anything like that, but he did have some power in the minors and whatnot, and seeing him come through in a clutch moment like that was nice. And then obviously you mentioned his name, so it's impossible to kind of mull over it. The Jordan Zimmerman experience that the Detroit Tigers had for the pleasure of dealing with for far too many years, will forever go down as one of the worst contracts in the history of the Detroit Tigers. And that might have been like his last good start with the team. I'm trying. I can count on two hands the amount of good starts that I think he had in the Tigers uniform. But yeah, him going out and there was a little bit of refound optimism, like, oh, maybe we'll salvage like a good final year of his career or something like that in this season, and that was very short lived, and I think he got hurt again, and yeah, not a very good tenure as a Detroit Tiger, unfortunately for Zimmerman, but he helped us get one of our like 48 wins we had in 2019. So there you go.
Scott, was Nico Goodrum on that 2019 team?
I believe that was yes, that was the year that Nico Goodrum, he was I don't remember if he was a waiver pickup or a minor league trade or something, but he was like a nobody. And then the Tigers were so bad that he was genuinely one of their best players, if not like arguably their best position player that season. Again, dreadful baseball team, as you can tell. But yeah, that was the season where people were like, oh, Nico Goodrum maybe could be like a super utility option when this team is good again. Like that was what we had to try to convince ourselves through those days. So yes, that would have been, I believe, the first like real season of Nico Goodrum's Tigers career. Yeah.
I think that's who got the double. And then it didn't matter because Kristen Stewart with the home run. Amazing. Just what an absolute blast. Locked On Blue Jays, Locked On Tigers crossover episode. What I would really hope, because I can't imagine that, Locked On Blue Jay fans are huge Tiger fans, but you heard Scott the last couple of days here wax poetically. Scott's got a baseball mind, so I would certainly hope we're going over and following the Locked On Tigers. Dare I say, I hope some of the Tiger fans as well say, hey, this bald-headed doofus is okay. You know what? I'll get the Locked On Jays.
I completely agree.
I'll follow as well. But, Scotty, this was an absolute blast. I do wish your Tigers well, starting on Friday. Is that fair? Can I say that? Starting on Friday, I wish your Tigers well.
You can pick any date you want. I will gladly take anything good happening to this team at the moment, even if you do want to prolong it 3 days. That's more than fine.
Oh, thanks so much for your time, Scotty. This was a blast.
Absolutely. I appreciate you.
That's a wrap for today's Locked On Blue Jays, and thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first podcast you listen to each day. I'll see you tomorrow, as yes, we'll all be happy that the weekend is here, but I mean, the Tampa Bay Rays are in town for a 3-game series this weekend, so from a Blue Jays standpoint, could be a long weekend, and not the fun kind of long weekend. In the words of Tom Cheek, touch 'em all, Joe, you'll never hit a bigger home run in your life.